Come join me as we paint this cute little cabin in frosty, snowy landscape. A couple years ago I did this painting and I thought it would be kind of fun to recreate it again as a full-length tutorial. I have a line drawing for you. It's just kind of a rough little sketch. I kind of placed the trees, but we're going to be kind of relaxed with how we're going to put those trees in. It's just kind of a reference for you. In the description, I'll share all the colors I used and all the supplies that I used. And we're going to use a little bit of table salt to get that frosty sky. And we're going to use just a little bit of masking fluid. I'm going to show you how to use bleed-proof white or a little white gouache. We're going to try out both of those today. And we're going to start off by using our masking fluid. I'm just protecting my brush with a little bar of soap. Just kind of wet my brush and roll it in that soap. And we're just going to put this along the roof line of the little cabin. Now you don't have to use masking fluid, but I just find that it's easier to put in our backdrop of trees without having to worry is it going to bleed into the roof line, because our roof is going to be covered in snow, so we want to keep that white. So for me, this kind of just takes some of that work out of the equation and just keeps everything nice and crisp. I decided to put a little bit of the masking fluid in the snow to kind of keep some highlights. In the end, I didn't really need to do this, but in the beginning I wasn't really sure how I was going to be approaching the snow, so I put in these little areas, and if I were to do it again I wouldn't be worrying about this, but I did it. It didn't hurt anything. So feel free to do this too, or just to leave it out. Now that the masking fluid is dried, I'm just going to lay down some water into our sky. I want it to be nice and even. Don't want any ripples in the paper, so I'm just making sure it just kind of soaks in there evenly. And I forgot to mention, I'm using a different paper than I did the last time. The first painting I did was with Arches 100% cotton, and this one is Saunders 100% cotton, and its texture is quite a bit different. It's a lot softer, so our colors are going to go on very differently than they did in the previous painting, but I'm really okay with that. I just kind of wanted this painting to be something that was playful. I wasn't worrying about technique quite as much and what the paper was going to do and not do. We're just going to have a lot of fun with this painting, just experimenting. And here I'm just dropping in some of my Prussian blue. I want to get it in there pretty deeply, because when we stick in our salt we want a very dramatic sky. I'm just kind of softening this a little bit. We're going to be adding in those trees while our sky is still wet, so I'm just kind of bringing that water down. I'm just trying to get some more color in there. The more color we get in the sky, the more dramatic it's going to be in the end, and it's going to be a pretty cool technique. So we're going to take a little bit of our sap green, and we're just kind of putting that backdrop of trees in. These are going to be the lightest of the trees, and we don't need any branches on these. We just kind of need kind of that shape of the tree. When we do our trees in the foreground, these will just kind of pop up in the background. I'm just kind of letting that paint spread on the page, and it's okay if it goes up into the blue sky a little bit. We don't want it to go too far, but we kind of want it to look kind of fuzzy in the background. I'm just going to take a more watery mixture, and I'm just going to kind of fill in that in the backdrop there. We don't want to spend too much time on these trees because we want that sky to stay wet It's really important that this first layer stays wet or our salt technique won't work. Alright, I'm going to take a generous helping of salt. I'm just going to sprinkle it on the page. Since I'm using a different type of paper, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to turn out, and it really depends on what kind of salt you use too. Like mine's a very fine table salt, and if you use a coarser salt, you're going to come up with a little bit different look, but that's just kind of the fun of it. You never know what you're going to get. Once that's dry, I'm just going to wipe off all that salt with a little paper towel, and I let it dry for a good 10-15 minutes on its own, because if you dry it too fast with a hair dryer, the salt won't have time to do its magic. Now I've kind of lost track of my pencil marks on my painting, and so I can kind of look at my reference drawing and kind of see where I want to place those trees, but you know, I'm not going to do it exactly the way I drew it. This painting isn't meant to be rigid. We're just going to really have fun with it and be loose. And I'm just going to practice a few little colors. This is my sap green deep. It's kind of a darker, cooler green. And then I'm going to take a little bit of my sap green and some of my Prussian blue, kind of making another deeper green. I'm going to kind of test out the two different colors, see which one I like better. And I'm really liking this color mixture, so we're going to be doing a little bit between the dark sap green and that sap green mixture with these trees. And some of our trees are going to be darker and some of them are going to be a little bit lighter, just to kind of show some of the trees that are closer and some that are a little smaller and farther away. I'm going to start with my number 6 round. I don't want to get too detailed with these trees. You kind of see the branches, but they're kind of soft. I'm kind of taking my branches and kind of making them go upward a little bit. And as we get closer to the bottom, our branches get a little bit wider. But as it kind of comes down lower, we're going to get softer with our branches. And you'll just kind of see as we go what I'm talking about. This is one of those paintings where we don't want to get caught up in the detail. And we'll have plenty of time to practice these trees as we go across the page. Just going to tap in some of that sap green mixture. We're going to have more than one color in there. Then our next tree, I'm just kind of mixing up another little green mixture with the dark sap green and the regular sap green. And I'm going to move to my number 4 round brush, a little extra water, and this tree is going to be just a little bit lighter because it's going to be kind of sitting behind the house and behind that first tree that we painted. And we'll just kind of keep working on those trees. Don't want to spend too much time. And it's kind of nice working wet on wet because we can kind of add in a little extra color as we go. And as always, our trees are going to lighten up a little bit. They're not going to stay quite as dark as they are right now. Now as we get close to the bottom, I'm just going to kind of tap in some water. I just kind of want to make those trees a little fuzzier at the bottom. My other trees are still wet, so I'm adding little droplets of water to those. It'll kind of give those trees kind of a neat texture, kind of make them look soft and frosty. And we're just going to keep working on our trees. And it's okay if our trees kind of run together and that the color just kind of bleeds into one another. I really want the bottom of these trees to be very soft. Now I've taken a very watery green mixture and just kind of added in a few more trees in the background. And now I'm just going to work on my last two big trees in the front. These are going to be the darkest of the trees because they're the closest to us. I'm just kind of slowly building the shape. Well, we're done with the trees for now, and we're going to take the masking fluid off our little cabin. I'm going to leave the masking fluid that's on the snow for now, and we're just going to wet down our little building. We're going to continue with our wet on wet techniques. I'm going to use my permanent red deep, and my permanent red deep is kind of a warmer red. I like to use my Van Gogh color. It tends to be a warmer red. I have this same color in the Daniel Smith and it's a cooler red, but I really wanted to start off our cabin with a warmer color that'll kind of pop through from underneath when we darken our layers. And I'm finding with this paper that it spreads a lot differently than when I'm using my arches. So I'm just kind of learning as I go. I have all sorts of different papers in my studio, and I love using arches. It's kind of the one that I know how to use the best. And so I've just been practicing doing paintings with my other papers because they don't last forever. They do have a shelf life. There's a sizing that's on the paper and it can go bad. So I've spent money on these other papers, and I thought, if I'm just gonna play, let's just try some of these other papers and see what they do. And since this is just kind of a fun little painting, I'm not worried that it's not spreading and laying quite like I'm used to. It's still going to be really cute in the end. And I've kind of added my deeper red, my cooler red, just kind of placing it in there. You can kind of still see that warmer red kind of pop through a little bit. And then I'm going to take my deeper red and a little bit of my Mooonglow and make a more deeper red that's going to be more of a shadow color. And if you don't have Mooonglow, just take your blue and add your blue to your red to make a little deeper red. Now I'm just going to mix a little color to make kind of my window color. A little blue, a little of the Mooonglow, just to kind of make a deeper blue. And these windows are so teeny tiny. I'd probably rather fill these in with a pen, but we're going to just stick with watercolor. I'm not using any pen on this painting. And these little windows don't need to be perfect. There's really no way to make them perfect when they're this small. I could have done this painting as an 8x10, made it a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to handle, but I just wanted to keep it small, kind of cute and small. So the perfectionist part of me that loves detail is struggling a little bit here with these windows in this little cabin, but I'm pushing myself. I'm teaching myself also to let go of detail and keep things simple. I'm just going to take that color and make it extra watery, and we're just going to add a little bit of shadow into our snow. And if it feels too dark, you can just dab it out with a little bit of tissue or paper towel. Even though this is really watery, it feels pretty dark to me. So I'm just gonna kind of tap it out. It leaves a little bit of residue, which is just the perfect amount of color. I'm just gonna add a little bit of water so that my color goes on a little softer. We want our snow to be just kind of fuzzy and soft and no harsh lines. And our shadow is kind of on that left side of the house and the left side of the trees. So I'm just going to make that area a little bit darker. And remember that blue is our masking fluid, so that blue is going to go away in a few minutes. And I'm putting in a few little footsteps in the snow, like somebody was walking up to the cabin. I kind of put on the color, and then I just add a little extra water to soften it. Just kind of making my shadow a little bit darker. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of green into that shadow, so it's kind of like a little reflection of the tree. Some of that color just kind of reflects on the snow. And now that it's all dry, we're going to take off the rest of our masking fluid. And we're going to start working on the snow on the trees. I'm going to start off using some of my gouache. And we're going to use a little of that bleed proof. I'm going to kind of show you the difference of how both of them work. The white gouache, we still want to kind of keep a little thick. I'm going to just kind of practice my consistency here. Just kind of see how it goes on the paper. And right now it looks pretty opaque, but as it sits on the tree, that green is going to kind of soak through a little bit, and that white is going to get a little more dull, but it's a good first layer for snow, and we're not sticking on a lot. We're just kind of putting a few little dabs here and there. I'm just kind of skipping across the page. I don't want big blobs. I don't want too much on my brush. Now, if I had wanted to use masking fluid to mask out where I wanted the snow, I could have done that, but that just seemed like too much work to plan out where the snow was going to go, and it's kind of fun to do it after the fact and just kind of add a little more character to the tree at the end. Now we're going to use a little bit of the bleed proof. It's also really thick. I kind of watered it down just a little bit. My jar I've had for a while, so I think it's gotten a little thicker as time has gone on. And you can kind of see how it goes on a little bit brighter. It's bleed proof, so that green paint isn't gonna peek through. And so I'm just going to add a little bit more on these other trees just to add a little more highlight to a little bit of the snow. And I wanted the trees in the foreground here to really pop out, so using that bleed proof on these two trees in the front is kind of where I wanted to use that bleed proof paint. And our painting isn't going into a gallery, it's not going into a competition, so adding a little bit of white on the top, it's just fun. We don't have to be serious about this, and it's just a fun way to add a little bit of snow at the end. I just took a few little spots in my snow to add a little more white, just for little highlights. I don't want to make it all white. And there you have it, your cute little cozy cabin in the snow with your sparkly frosty sky and your snowy trees. And here we have the side-by-side, same colors, same picture, different paper. And look how different those two turned out. I still love my arches, but it was certainly fun using a different paper today. And there you have it, your cute little painting. I hope you're going to give it a try.